There we go. I need to find my ears here. It has been a crazy week. I don't know how it's been for you guys, but where are my ears? Um, you know, uh, it's funny how I was talking to Don the other day about how. Hold on, I'm pulling my. What the heck? Ah, all right, we'll be doing this without ears. I don't think I need to hear, so we'll figure that out later. But at least the sound's on. Hopefully, you guys have sound. It has been an absolutely crazy week. I don't know how it's been for you. Actually, a crazy 2 weeks. So, we have good stress and we have bad stress, and a lot of people don't realize that there's good stress. Good stress is getting ready to go on a vacation and trying to get all that stuff done, and adding to your family or your kid graduating. There's all kinds of different stressors you can have in your life. So we had the stress of getting ready, to go on, but absolutely blessed to be able to go camping for a few days. And we got to add a day, which was great. We don't ever get to do that. But the spot happened to be open. Good morning, Debbie. The spot had to be happened to be open, and we just didn't. We got there late because we had some mechanical issues. Got there a day late, and so we were able to extend it on the other end, which we really needed. It was really good for us. And then you've got to come back and unpack everything and do all the laundry and go back to work for Don, get up at 4:30 that next morning, and it just takes a while to kind of I'm one of those people that when my schedule gets disrupted, it takes me a couple days to get straight. I don't know if that's just a weird thing with me or if you guys have that too. But it took me a couple days to get my feet under me. If I'm going to get sick, it's going to be off some kind of stressful event. I didn't get sick this time, but you know what I mean? Like either good stress or bad stress, it kind of triggers a bunch of cortisol reaction in the body, and it lowers your immune system. And so if you're going to get sick, if you notice, it's a lot of times off of some stressful or coming off of some stressful event. But so we got back, we got all that done. As you guys know, we had to find a new provider for my brother because the provider that was taking care of him, um, we found out had lawbreakers living in the house. Even the guys that were there in care didn't know. This person was sneaking them in and out. And a neighbor reported it, thank goodness. And so all of the three guys living in the home had to find new places. We found out in August, and they had to be out by the 1st of September because the state was taking away this person's certification to be able to provide care. And so my brother's in a great home, the best. I mean, we've looked for this forever. And I was praying when all this was going on. I'm like, Lord, help us. This is going to be John's sixth or seventh move. Help us find somebody, who is well suited to him, who can be like family to us because we want to be close with the people that are helping John. And I had been so stressed about it, and I thought, no, I'm just going to put it in God's hands. My worrying isn't going to help anything. And then this provider happened to come up, and it was further away than I wanted John to be, but 45 minutes, so it's not undoable. And he was going to have to leave his day program, all of his friends and everything, which is stressful for him, which is stressful for me because I worry for him. And so we got him, they got him all moved and everything settled, get the new day program he loves, which is great. And it's just, how when something's from God because it all falls into place. That's kind of what it's been like. So, they're trying to get corrected a lot of the things that were not done by the previous provider as far as meds and like official charting and stuff that just wasn't done. And so that's a bit of stress. Plus, we're moving John out of storage. So we were up late. Hi, Ashley. We were up late last night doing that. And so what is today? Today's Wednesday. We got back from camping. Yeah, so the night that we got back from camping, I got a call from, I guess the next morning, I got a call from John's new provider. So one of the people that John had lived with in care in the previous home was Grayson. And Grayson is 20, and John felt like Grayson was his little brother. And so he was really worried for Grayson. Where was Grayson going to go live? And would Grayson be happy there? And would he get to see Grayson? And so Megan and John, his new providers, yes, two named Johns, um, Megan and John were like, "Hey, buddy, don't worry about it. As soon as everything gets settled, we'll go to the movies and take Grayson out to eat." And so John had gone to Florida with the new family and had a great time and came back. And and so they were making these plans to get together with Grayson. Well, then I get this call that sorry, and I knew Grayson, but I got a call from John's provider that they'd found a home for him, and he had gone to this new home, and he's his own guardian, and he decided that he didn't want to live there, so he sorry guys, so he went to live with some friends, and the other night he was in Lexington and he was crossing Mount Tabor and Richmond Road, and he got hit by a car and died a few hours later at the hospital. And it has just tore me to pieces because I knew Grayson. John lived with him for a year, and um, John and Grayson had called me that last night that they were at the house, and this has just been a couple weeks ago. And Grayson, I could hear John was really upset because the provider that was there was supposed to be getting their laundry done and packing them up, and John was worried he wasn't going to have clean underwear to go to the new house with, and Grayson was upset because he couldn't get his bed apart. I mean, stuff that they shouldn't have even been having to worry about or do, and so Grayson was going to tear his bed apart. He was very upset, and so I told John, I said, put Grayson on the phone, let me talk to him, and I've talked to Grayson many times, and I said, hey, buddy, don't tear up the bed. Everything's going to be okay. And he's like, I just don't understand how Michael could do this. How could he do this? We all have to find someplace else to live, and we can't live together anymore. And John's like my brother. And so I talked to him probably for an hour trying to get him settled down. And, he was just so upset, and I didn't want him to go to bed upset. And, I said, you know what, this may turn out to be a really good thing. You may love this new provider. And you guys didn't realize all the things that were going wrong here. But now you do know, and this just isn't a safe place for you. And, Grayson's family's not really involved. And I mean, his mom doesn't have anything to do with him. And a lot of the things that Grayson struggled with were because of that. And I just, sorry guys, I hate to dump all this on you, but John's gonna, the lady who works at the agency, I wanted to wait to tell John until we had all the details. And because, John frets over the details. And I said, let's make sure we have all the details for the service, which the families can't provide. So the agency is going to provide a service after the cremation. And so the lady at the agency who's taking care of all this is going by to tell John today. And it's just going to break his heart. And as much as it's broken mine, it's just killing me for John. And I keep reminding myself, Penny, you've been over on the other side. Grayson is with the Lord and in a wonderful place, and he's not going to have all of the things. People really made fun of him and teased him for being special needs and stuff, and he's really high functioning like John is, and loved skateboarding and I think sometimes it's harder for the people who have intellectual disabilities who are higher functioning because they pick up on the subtle teasing. And, like John and Grayson, it's not like they have Down syndrome. There's certain disorders that come with, or, certain problems that come with intellectual disabilities. And I always thought it was harder for John because you couldn't look at him and know something was wrong with him. So people always just kind of pegged him as weird or stupid or whatever. And it brought him a lot of grief that if people could have looked at him immediately and known, okay, he's special needs, they would have given him a little more grace. But it was the same for Grayson. He wanted to have friends and have a peer group, of just regular people in their 20s, and people didn't want to hang out with him because they thought he was weird or something was wrong with him. And so anyway, that's just been super hard. And like I said, it breaks my heart for John. And it just was so senseless. I can't help but blame that care provider who was doing all of those things that caused the boys to have to leave, because had it not been for that, Grayson wouldn't have been in the position to cross that road and be killed the other day. So there's that. So that's going to be really tough. John also during COVID lost his girlfriend. She didn't die from COVID. She had gone to the doctor that morning because she was having some shortness of breath, and they thought it was seasonal allergies and put her on some asthma medicine. And they got home, and that evening they were all just kind of playing in the yard, not John, but his girlfriend and the caregivers. And she started having trouble breathing, and so the caregiver ran in to get her inhaler. And as she came running back out into the garage, Victoria fell to her knees and then forward on her face. And it turned out the reason she was having trouble breathing was because she had a blood clot in her lung, and she died instantly. And so John has suffered so much loss, in addition to having to move around and change homes. And so if you guys would just pray for John. Oh, I almost didn't do the show today because this is so fresh and still so upsetting. But, I always feel like I come away from the show with a higher perspective on things. So I thought it was important that I do it. And you guys are my friends. You're the people I want to share life with. So I wanted to come on and talk to you about that. But anyway, we got him all moved last night and got all of his stuff they're getting the last of his stuff out of storage today. So he's going to be really excited to get his stuff back in his house. Up until now, his whole comic book collection has been in storage for a few years now. So, that'll be good for him. And I've got an interview tonight. I mean, it's just so funny how things time out. I've got an interview tonight on my near-death experience, and I've got several this month actually, and then no more. I'm not doing any more until the book's done. Just because it takes so much preparation. I pray for 2 weeks straight before I do any kind of appearance on my near-death experience, so that God could guide me on how to speak, what to focus on in my near-death experience that will specifically speak to that audience. So there's a lot of prep work that goes into these talks for me, and it just makes it where there's not a lot of time for a whole lot of anything else, because I'm just all day long praying, God, what do you want me to focus on, and trying to be receptive to that. And it's hard when you've got a lot of life going on. Life gets complicated for sure. But anyway, thank you for coming. I'm so sorry to fall apart at the opening of the show. I thought I could get through it. I kept looking at Don the other day, and I'm like, I just can't believe Grayson's dead. I just kept saying it, and I apologized to him. I said, I don't mean to keep saying it. I can't believe Grayson's dead. I just can't believe it. 20 years old. I mean, a baby. It just blows me away. Oh, thank you, Ashley. You guys are so sweet. Oh, what a week. What a week. They had actually tried to get hold of us. Sorry, I keep messing that up there. They had actually tried to get hold of us on vacation, and my cell phone signal was out. And I was so glad for that. Because it would have just destroyed me on vacation. We wouldn't have been able to enjoy that last day. I'm kind of one of those people. I tell people all the time, look, I tell Don, I said, if something were to happen to me and I were to die in the middle of the night, don't wake anyone up. Don't call and wake people up, because no one called and woke me up with this news, but just as a rule, I said, I will still be just as dead at 9 a.m. and everyone will have had a good night's sleep. So yeah, I always wondered, I understand people are upset and that's why they make the call, because they need to talk to family. But I'm like, just suck it up for a few hours and let everybody get a full 8 hours in before you hit them with news like that. Thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you, Tennessee Woman, and Let's Get Sewing. Um, yeah, it is awful. Yeah, it's awful. I mean, they tried everything they could to save him. I think they worked on him for 2 hours, which is typical. When someone's really young, we would have people really young come through the ER. I think I've lost 2 kids in my career in the ER, and that's just something that sticks with you. And kids like 12 and 7, and 20 is still a kid to us, and so that loss is just huge, and I hate that the family um, is not as it should be. But all of that said, I've been to the other side, and it's awesome and it's great, but it doesn't. And people will ask me all the time. They'll say, is death easier for you? Like losing somebody, is it easier for you because you know that? And you'd think it would be. It's not. It's not. You know why I think it's not easier? Even though I wasn't sure about heaven before all of that happened to me, and then it happened, and then I was sure of heaven. Um, the grief that you have, at least for me, the grief was that the the absence of the person, so I still feel that acutely because no matter where they are, they're still absent from me, and so that's a grief that um, I don't think got better just because I had a near death experience. And I am logically able to rationalize it and say, I know where this person is. I know it's incredible. I know his life there is perfect, whereas here it was filled with trouble. Um, and I'm glad for that. And I know I'll see him and stuff, and that'll be good because I loved him, and I still do. Um, but anyway, so I've got these things coming up. I'm trying to get prepared for those, and John's got a bunch of things going on as we get him settled. So if you guys would just be in prayer about that. But other than all of that, things are going well. It was nice to take just some little extra time off to be able to spend with Don, and we got to go up and see my daughter in Ohio. So my daughter and her husband and their kids live up there, and we went up for my grandson Atlas's 6th birthday. Can't believe he's 6. And it's just such a good time. Jake and Laura are very good hosts. So I have a son, Jake, and I have a son-in-law, Jake. Um, but they're very good hosts. My other son, David, and his wife, Madeline, and the kids, Cole and Nora, got to go too. So the only one that wasn't there was my youngest son and his fiance. Um, oh, thank you, Debbie. Um, and so we got to go up, and they'd rented a bounce house for the kids that I was going to go in, but there was always a bunch of kids in it. And I thought, if I go in there with my grown self and I start jumping around on that bounce house, I'm going to toss some little kid right out through the roof. And I thought that would probably put a damper on things. And it was never empty, so I didn't get to try it. And then somebody peed in there, and that was it. It had to come down, so we didn't get to do that. But it was a nice barbecue, and we went out to dinner with the kids after, and that was fun. It was a really cool little restaurant. I can't remember the name of it, in Bryan, Ohio. It's the smallest little town. It's all highway, and then it's not. And it's all like back country roads for 2 hours, or probably close to that, to get there. But there was this cool little restaurant, and it was right on the railroad tracks, and they had a deck out on the back, and it had a rail that has like a tabletop, so you could sit there and eat and watch the trains, which I don't know why you would do because the trains are loud. And with all the derailments these days, I'm like, yeah, let's not sit back here with the kids. So, but we did. We had a good meal, and came home and sat with the grandkids while all the adult kids went out and had fun, and just got to stay overnight. But that was really cool, and it's just always fun to spend time with the kids, the grandkids together, because it's fun to see all the cousins interact. And um, but anyway, that's been the week. I don't mean to prattle on endlessly. Good morning, Michael. We are on. And we've got so much news to catch up on Friday night. There's so much going on. We are on part 6 of uh, Max Lucado's Jesus, the God Who Knows Your Name. So let me see if I can get that to put. Oh, it did. It worked. Wait, hold on. We have to share our screen. Oh, We'll get there, guys. Now you guys are all going to be bummed out. I'm so sorry. But it means a lot that you guys are here for me. It makes me feel better. Just talking to you about it makes me feel more settled about it. So that's good. All right. I don't know if I'm going to need my glasses or not. Part 6, Returning King. The most luxurious flight in the world is offered by Etihad Airways, the United Arab Emirates national carrier. They will fly you from New York City to Mumbai in your own penthouse in the sky. It comes with a chef, a butler, and turn-down service for the double bed that is outfitted with Italian linens. You will enjoy your private living room and relax on a leather couch as you binge-watch movies on your 32-inch flat-screen television. Meals are cooked to order and served in abundance. Before landing, if you choose, you can take a shower in your private bathroom and make dinner arrangements through your personal concierge. I would like to experience the flight. I don't want to pay $38,000 for a one-way ticket, but if given the opportunity free of charge, I'd take it. And I would have only one stipulation. The flight needs to end. I don't care how wonderful, opulent, luxurious, and magnificent the flight is. I really want it to end. I enjoy the journey as much as the next person. I just don't want the journey to last forever. You don't either. We're wired to seek a destination. We are human homing pigeons. Something inside us longs to land at our intended destination. Perhaps that is why we cherish thinking of Jesus as our returning King. He gives us this encouragement. Hold on to your faith in God and to your faith in me. There are many rooms in my Father's house. If there were not, should I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? It is true that I am going away to prepare a place for you, but it is just as true that I am coming again to welcome you into my own home so that you may be where I am. John 14, verses 1 through 3. Underline that promise and highlight it in yellow. I am coming again. Christ guarantees his second coming. This return visit will be for good, for our good. He urges us to prepare for and ponder often the world that awaits us. Set your mind on things above. Colossians 3, verse 2. This verb emerges from the verb phroneo, which means to savor or think about, causing one translation to read, set your affection on things above. I obeyed this passage in an earthly fashion. Months before we moved to San Antonio in 1988, I knew what our house looked like. It was a brick house with a dark brown door on a quiet cul-de-sac. Before we moved to the United States from Rio, some friends sent us a picture of the house. It was for sale, and with one look, I was sold. I posted the photo in our Brazilian kitchen and gave it multiple gazes a day. I studied its exterior and pondered its interior. I showed the photo to the girls and examined it with my wife. By the time we moved to San Antonio, I could have picked out the house from a dozen others. I was acquainted with my home before I reached it. Christ wants us to do the same. He has changed our permanent residence. Think only about it. Keep your mind on it. Think about the things of heaven. Pursue the things over which Christ presides. These translations combine to declare in one verse, obsess yourself with the life to come. Heaven is the green vegetable on the spiritual diet. The soul needs hourly gazes into our forever home. You need to know that Christ is coming for you. You need to know what your eternal body will be like. You need to imagine the New Jerusalem and the face of God. You need to be consumed with things above. It's not easy to do. Heaven focus demands diligence. This life is full of distractions and detours, but don't heed them. Listen to your heart. In C.S. Lewis's The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Reepicheep, the valiant mouse, resolves to discover Aslan's country. While I can, he declares, I'll sail east in the dawn treader. When she fails me, I paddle east in my coracle. When she sinks, I shall swim east with my 4 paws. And when I can swim no longer, if I have not reached Aslan's country, or shot over the edge of the world in some vast cataract, I shall sink with my nose to the sunrise. May God stir identical hunger in us. May we seek those things that are above, set our mind on things above. May we sail, paddle, swim, and if need be, die with our noses to the sunrise, savoring the day we will finally be home. Chapter 18, The Resurrection and the Life. You are leaving the church building. The funeral is over. The burial is next. Ahead of you walk 6 men who carry the coffin that carries the body of your son, your only son. You're numb from the sorrow, stunned. You lost your husband, and now you've lost your son. Now you have no family. If you had any more tears, you'd weep. If you had any more faith, you'd pray. But both are in short supply, so you do neither. You just stare at the back of the wooden box. Suddenly it stops. The pallbearers have stopped. You stop. A man has stepped in front of the casket. You don't know him. You've never seen him. He wasn't at the funeral. He's dressed in a corduroy coat and jeans. You have no idea what he's doing, but before you can object, he steps up to you and says, "Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. This is a funeral. My son is dead. Don't cry. Who are you to tell me not to cry?" Those are your thoughts, but they never become your words, because before you can speak, he acts. He turns back to the coffin, places his hand on it, and says in a loud voice, "Young man, I tell you, get up." Now, just a minute, one of the pallbearers objects, but the sentence is interpreted by a sudden movement, interrupted by a sudden movement in the casket. The men look at one another and lower it quickly to the ground. It's a good thing they do, because as soon as it touches the sidewalk, the lid slowly opens. Sound like something out of a science fiction novel? It's not. It's right out of the Gospel of Luke. He went up and touched the coffin, and the people who were carrying it stopped. Jesus said, "Young man, I tell you, get up." And the son sat up and began to talk. Luke 7, verses 14 through 15. Be careful now. Don't read that last line too fast. Try it again, slowly. The son sat up and began to talk. Incredible sentence, don't you think? At the risk of overdoing it, let's read it one more time. This time, say each word aloud. The son sat up and began to talk. Good job. Can we do it again? This time, read it aloud again, but very slowly. Pause after each word. The son sat up and began to talk. Now the question, what's odd about that verse? You got it. Dead people don't sit up. Dead people don't talk. Dead people don't leave their coffins unless Jesus shows up. But when Jesus shows up, you never know what might happen. Jairus can tell you his daughter was already dead. The mourners were already in the house. The funeral had begun. The people thought the best Jesus could do was offer some kind of words about Jairus' girl. Jesus had some words, all right, not about the girl, but for the girl. "My child, stand up." Luke 8, verse 54. The next thing the father knew, she was eating. Jesus was laughing, and the hired mourners were sent home early. Martha experienced a similar miracle. She'd hoped Jesus would show up to heal Lazarus. He didn't. Then she'd hoped he'd show up to bury Lazarus. He didn't. By the time he made it to Bethany, Lazarus was 4 days buried, and Martha was wondering what kind of friend Jesus was. She hears he's at the edge of town, so she storms out to meet him. "Lord, if you had been here," she confronts, My brother would not have died. John 11, verse 21. There's hurt in those words, hurt and disappointment. The one man who could have made a difference didn't. And Martha wants to know why. Maybe you do too. Maybe you've done what Martha did. Someone you love ventures near the edge of life, and you turn to Jesus for help. You, like Martha, turn to the only one who can pull a person from the ledge of death. You ask Jesus to give a hand. Martha must have thought, surely he'll come. Didn't he aid the paralytic? Didn't he help the leper? Didn't he give sight to the blind? And they hardly knew Jesus. Lazarus is his friend. We're like family. Doesn't Jesus come for the weekend? Doesn't he eat at our table? When he hears that Lazarus is sick, he'll be here in a heartbeat. But he didn't come. Lazarus got worse. She watched out the window. Jesus didn't show. Her brother drifted in and out of consciousness. He'll be here soon, Lazarus, she promised. Hang on. But the knock at the door never came. Jesus never appeared, not to help, not to heal, not to bury. And now, 4 days later, he finally shows up. The funeral's over, the body is buried, and the grave is sealed. If only you had been here, she told Jesus, my brother would not have died. Something about death makes us accuse God of betrayal. If God were here, there would be no death, we claim. If God is God anywhere, he has to be God in the face of death. Pop psychology can deal with depression. Pep talks can deal with pessimism. Prosperity can handle hunger. But only God can deal with our ultimate dilemma, death. And only the God of the Bible has dared to stand on the canyon's edge and offer an answer. He has to be God in the face of death. If not, he is not God anywhere. Jesus wasn't angry at Martha. Perhaps it was his patience that caused her to change her tone from frustration to earnestness. Even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus then made one of those claims that place him either on the throne or in the asylum. Your brother will rise again. Martha misunderstood. Who wouldn't have? I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. That wasn't what Jesus meant. Don't miss the context of the next words. Imagine the setting. Jesus has intruded on the enemy's turf. He's standing in Satan's territory, Death Canyon. His stomach turns as he smells the sulfuric stench of the ex-angel, and he winces as he hears the oppressed wails of those trapped in the prison. Satan has been here. He has violated one of God's creations. With his foot planted on the serpent's head, Jesus speaks loudly enough that his words echo off the canyon walls. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. It is a hinge point in history. A chink has been found in death's armor. The keys to the halls of hell have been claimed. The buzzards scatter and the scorpions scurry as life confronts death and wins. The wind stops. A cloud blocks the sun and a bird chirps in the distance, while a humiliated snake slithers between the rocks and disappears into the ground. Lazarus, come out. Martha is silent. The mourners are quiet. No one stirs as Jesus stands face to face with the rock-hewn tomb and demands that it release his friend. No one stirs, that is, except Lazarus. Deep within the tomb, he moves. His stilled heart begins to beat again. Rapt eyes pop open, wooden fingers lift, and a mummied man in a tomb sits up. Want to know what happened next? Let John tell you. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Question: what's wrong with this picture? Answer: dead people don't walk out of tombs. Question: what kind of God is this? Answer: the God who holds the keys to life and death. Can Jesus actually replace death with life? He did a convincing job with his own. Fast forward to the Sunday morning after the Friday crucifixion of Jesus. Joy is the last thing Mary Magdalene expects as she approaches the tomb. The last few days had brought nothing to celebrate. The Jews could celebrate, Jesus was out of the way. The soldiers could celebrate, their work was done, but Mary couldn't celebrate. To her, the last few days had brought nothing but tragedy. Mary had been there. She'd heard the leaders clamor for Jesus' blood. She had witnessed the Roman whip rip the skin off his back. She had winced as the thorn sliced his brow and had wept at the weight of the cross. She was there. She was there to place her arm around the shoulders of Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was there to close his eyes. She was there. So it's not surprising that she wants to be there again. In the early morning mist, she arises from her mat, takes her spices and aloe, leaves her house, and walks past the gate of Geneth and up the hillside. She anticipates a somber task. By now the body will be swollen, his face will be white, death's odor will be pungent. A gray sky gives way to gold as she walks up the narrow trail. As she rounds the final bend, she gasps. The rock in front of the grave is pushed back. Someone took the body. She runs to awaken Peter and John. They rush to see for themselves. She tries to keep up with them, but can't. Peter comes out of the tomb bewildered, and John comes out believing, but Mary just sits in front of it weeping. The two men go home and leave her alone with her grief. But something tells her she's not alone. Maybe she hears a noise, maybe a whisper, or maybe she just hears her own heart telling her to look for herself. Whatever the reason, she does. She stoops down, sticks her head into the hewn entrance, and waits for her eyes to adjust to the dark. She hears, "Why are you crying?" John 20, verse 13. And she sees what look to be two angels, because they're white, radiantly white. There are two lights on either end of the vacant slab, two candles blazing on an altar. Why are you crying? An uncommon question to be asked in a cemetery. In fact, the question is rude. That is, unless the questioner knows something the questionee doesn't. They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they've put him. She still calls him my Lord. As far as she knows, his lips are silent. As far as she knows, his corpse has been carted off by grave robbers. But in spite of it all, he is still her Lord. Such devotion moves Jesus. It moves him closer to her. So close, she hears him breathing. She turns, and there he stands. She thinks he's the gardener. "Why are you crying?" he asks. "Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking the gardener knows the location of the body, she asks him to tell her. She will fetch the corpse. But then Jesus speaks. "Mary." Mary was shocked. It's not often you hear your name spoken by an eternal tongue, but when she did, she recognized it. And when she did, she responded correctly. She worshiped him. In a moment, she realized the truth of the gospel that had yet to spread, the resurrection, not of Lazarus, but of Christ himself. My page right here, guys. Friday's tragedy emerged as Sunday's savior, and even Satan knew he'd been had. He'd been a tool in the hand of the gardener. All the time he thought he was defeating heaven. He was helping heaven. God wanted to prove his power over sin and death, and that is exactly what he did. And guess who helped him do it? Once again, Satan's layup became a foul up. Only this time he didn't give heaven some points. He gave heaven the championship game. Death has been swallowed up in victory. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 54. No, hold on. There we go. Chapter 19, The Great Day. With hopes of earning extra cash, my dad once took a 3-month job assignment in New England. I was 10 years old, midway between training wheels and girlfriends. I thought much about baseball and bubblegum. Can't say I ever thought once about Bangor, Maine, until Dad went there. When he did, I found the town on the map. I calculated the distance between the Texas plains and the Lobster Coast. My teacher let me write a report on Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and Dad sent us a jug of maple syrup. Our family lived in two worlds, ours and his. We talked much about my father's pending return. When Dad comes back, we'll fix the basketball net, take a trip to Grandma's, stay up later. Mom used his coming to comfort and caution. She could do both with the same phrase, with soft assurances. Your dad'll be home soon. Or clenched teeth. Your dad will be home soon. She circled his arrival date on the calendar and crossed out each day as it passed. She made it clear Dad's coming would be a big deal. It was. 4 decades have weathered the memories, but these remain. The sudden smell of Old Spice in the house, his deep, bellowing voice, gifts all around, and a happy sense of settledness. Dad's return changed everything. The return of Christ will do likewise. Jude has a name for this event, the Great Day. Jude verse 6. It's a weird way to put that. The phrase fits. Everything about the day will be unprecedented. His shout will get our attention, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16. Because we see angels, hear trumpets, or embrace our grandparents, we will be engulfed before we see angels, hear trumpets, or embrace our grandparents, we will be engulfed by Jesus' voice. John heard the voice of God and compared it to the sound of many waters. Revelation 1, verse 15. Perhaps you've stood at the base of a cataract so loud and full of fury that you had to shout to be heard. Or maybe you've heard the roar of a lion. When the king of beasts opens his mouth, every head in the jungle lifts. The King of Kings will prompt the same response. The Lord will roar from on high. Jeremiah 25, verse 30. Lazarus heard such a roar. His body was entombed and his soul in paradise when Jesus shouted into both places. Jesus cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out. John 11, verses 43 and 44. Expect the same shout and shaking of the corpses on the great day. The dead will hear the voice of the Son of God. All who are in their graves will hear his voice. Then they will come out. John 5, verse 25, 28 through 29. The shout of God will trigger the voice of an archangel with the trumpet of God. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16. The archangel is the commanding officer. He will dispatch armies of angels to their greatest mission, to gather the children of God into one great assemblage. Envision these silver messengers spilling out of the heavens into the atmosphere. You'll more quickly count the winter snowflakes than you will number these hosts. Jude announced that the Lord is coming with thousands and thousands of holy angels to judge everyone. Jude verses 14 through 15. The population of God's armies was too high for John to count. He saw 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. Revelation 5, verse 11. They minister to the saved and battle the devil. They keep you safe and clear your path. He has put his angels in charge of you to watch over you wherever you go. Psalm 91, verse 11. And on the great day, they will escort you into the skies, where you will meet God. He'll dispatch the angels. They will pull in the chosen from the four winds, from pole to pole. Mark 13, verse 27. Whether you are in Peoria or Paradise, if you're a follower of Jesus, you can count on an angelic chaperone into the greatest gathering in history. We assume the demons will gather the rebellious. We aren't told. We are told, however, that the saved and lost alike will witness the assembly. All the nations will be gathered before him. Matthew 25, verse 32. At some point in this grand collection, our spirits will be reunited with our bodies. It will happen in a moment, in the blink of an eye, when the last trumpet is blown. For when the trumpet sounds, those who have died will be raised to live forever, and we who are living will also be transformed. For our dying bodies must be transformed into bodies that will never die. Our mortal bodies must be transformed into immortal bodies. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 52 and 53. Paradise will give up her souls, the earth will give up her dead, and the sky will stage a reunion of spirit and flesh. As our souls re-enter our bodies, a massive sound will erupt around us. On that day, heaven will pass away with a roaring sound. Everything that made up the universe will burn and be destroyed. The earth and everything that people have done on it will be exposed. 2 Peter 3, verse 10. Jesus called this the recreation of the world, Matthew 19, verse 28. God will purge every square inch that sin has contaminated, polluted, degraded, or defiled. But we may not even notice the reconstruction, for an even greater sight will appear before us. The Son of Man coming on the clouds in the sky with power and great glory. Matthew 24, verse 30. By this point, we will have seen much: the flurry of angels, the ascension of the bodies, the great gathering of the nations. We will have heard much: the shout of God and the angel, the trumpet blast, and the purging explosion. But every sight and sound will seem a remote memory compared to what will happen next. He will be king and sit on his great throne. Matthew 25, verse 31. This is the direction in which all history is headed. This is the moment toward which God's plot is moving. The details, characters, antagonists, heroes, and subplots all arc in this direction. God's story carries us toward a coronation for which all creation groans. For everything, absolutely everything, above and below, visible and invisible, rank after rank of angels, everything got started in him and finds its purpose in him. He was supreme in the beginning, and leading the resurrection parade, he is supreme in the end. Colossians 1, verse 16 and 18. On the great day, you'll hear billions of voices making the identical claim about Jesus Christ. Every knee will bow to the name of Jesus, everyone in heaven, on earth, and under the earth, and everyone will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Philippians 2, verses 10 and 11. Multitudes of people will bow low like a field of wind-blown wheat, each one saying, Jesus Christ is Lord. There will be one monumental difference. Some people will continue the confession they began on earth. They will crown Christ again, gladly. Others will crown him for the first time. They will do so sadly. They denied Christ on earth, so he will deny them in heaven. But those who accepted him on earth will live with God forever. I heard a voice thunder from the throne. Look, look, God has moved into the neighborhood, making his home with men and women. They're his people. He's their God. Revelations 21, verse 3. The narrator makes the same point 4 times in 4 consecutive phrases. God has moved into the neighborhood. He's making his home with men and women. They're his people. He's their God. The announcement comes with the energy of a 6-year-old declaring the arrival of his father from a long trip. Daddy's home. He's here. Mom, he's back. One statement won't suffice. This is big news worthy of repetition. We shall finally see God face to face. They shall see his face. Revelation 22, verse 4. Let this sink in. You will see the face of God. You will look into the eyes of the one who has always seen. You will behold the mouth that commands history. And if there's anything more amazing than the moment you see his face, it's the moment he touches yours. That one got me. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Revelations 21, verse 4. God will touch your tears, not flex his muscles or show off his power. Lesser kings would strut their stallions or give a victory speech, not God. He prefers to rub a thumb across your cheek, as if to say, there, no more tears. Isn't that what a father does? There was much I didn't understand about my father's time in Maine. The responsibilities of his job, his daily activities, the reason he needed to go. I was too young to comprehend all the details, but I knew this much. He would come home. By the same token, who can understand what God is doing? These days on earth can seem so difficult, marred by conflict, saddened by separation. We fight, pollute, discriminate, and kill. Societies suffer from innumerable fiefdoms, small would-be dynasties. What is this world coming to, we wonder? God's answer, a great day. On the great day, all history will be ah, on the great day, all history will be consummated in Christ. He will assume his position far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. Ephesians 1, verse 21. And he, the author of it all, will close the book on this life and open the book to the next, and begin to read to us from his unending story. Chapter 20. Heaven, finally home. You've been closer to heaven than you might have realized. Let me jog your memory. Zero in on your post-diaper pre-K years. Remember your childhood? What a splendid season. Waking up was a great idea, and waking your folks was even better. The day's highlight was the first sight of daylight, and the only bad time was bedtime. You were old enough to walk, but not old enough to worry. What was there to worry about? Ice cream had no calories, imagination had no boundaries, and life had no salaries. You climbed not the corporate ladder, but the playground ladder. Life was simple. Your desires were simple. You could spend an hour spinning a coffee can or a day digging oceanfront sand. Your schedule was simple. You never checked an itinerary, consulted a calendar, or made an appointment. If you wore a watch, you wore the plastic one that came in the cereal box. Childhood has no second hand or alarm clocks. Wasn't life simpler? What happened to the simplicity of childhood? Time happened. Alarm clocks started buzzing. School bells started ringing. Birthday candles began increasing. We soon learned the fallacy of the phrase, telling time. We don't tell time anything. Time does all the telling us to hurry through the caution light, truncate the conversation, purchase a cemetery plot. The noun time attracts prepositions like a dog attracts fleas. in and on attach themselves, finish the job in time, and get to work on time. The demands of time steal the simplicity of life. So does the complexity of stuff. Look at the stuff we manage. We keep cars gassed, beds made, books shelved, doors locked, and bills paid. What 4-year-old thinks about tonight's dinner? What 40-year-old doesn't? You once couldn't differentiate between a mortgage and a monkey, and now your mortgage might be one of the many monkeys on your back. Stuff complicates life. So do people. Divorces, lawsuits, dads who work too much or kids who won't work at all. People complicate life. They break hearts and promises, make messes and demands, and require daily feedings of grace and forgiveness. People weren't so complex in playground days. You could fight one minute and share a teeter-totter the next. In these adult days, we sulk longer and bruise deeper. Maintaining a life, maintaining a list of offenders is, well, it's complicated. It's been complicated ever since time, stuff, and people happened. If we could just get rid of them all, if we could just follow the example of the Christmas tree salesman from Michigan. Each Thanksgiving, he and his wife migrate to San Antonio and park their gooseneck camper trailer next to a tent of Christmas trees and spend the holiday season supplementing their retirement income. He's a friendly sort, and I enjoy hearing about his simple itinerary. One year I asked him where he was going after Christmas. This was his answer. I suppose we'll head to South Texas for a bit. Sometime in March we'll turn left and go to Florida. That was it. Boy, his schedule sounded good to me. My schedule had more entries by lunch than his had for the next year. Wouldn't it be great to pack it all in and go to South Texas until March, then turn left to Florida? But we know better. We've learned better. Our complexities have a way of following us to Florida or Maine or the golf course or spa. Time pressures happen there as well. So do the stresses of stuff and people. If simplicity is what you seek, you won't find it selling Christmas trees, but you will find it by going one more round with the complexity question. What really complicates life? Sin. To sin is to turn to anyone or anything for what only God can give. To turn to a hard body or a Harvard degree for significance. To turn to a bottle of scotch or a night of sex for pain management. To turn to religious busyness for guilt therapy. When we ask anything on earth to do heaven's job, we sin. And sin turns life into an advanced Sudoku puzzle. Calculate the time we spend undoing the damage of yesterday's sin, fighting bad habits, avoiding toxic relationships, regretting poor choices. How much energy do you expend repairing yesterday's decisions? Am I overstating the case when I say life is complicated today because we sinned yesterday? Work with me on this. How much simpler would your life be if you never sinned, never disobeyed God, never ignored his teaching or rebelled against his will? Extract all the fights, binges, hangovers, addictions, arguments, excessive debt, impure thoughts, and regrets from your life. Don't things get simpler quickly? Stay with me now. Multiply your answer by a few billion and imagine how different our world would be if no one ever sinned. Work on this for a moment. If our world were sinless, how would it be different? No unwanted babies or unresolved tensions. No nation would go to war. No tongue would gossip. No husband cheat. No wife chide. Sinlessness means no exploding tempers. Sinlessness disarms all bombs and weapons. We wouldn't bury ourselves in debt, buying what we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't know. We wouldn't beat ourselves up for stumbling yesterday because in a sinless society we didn't sin yesterday and we won't stumble tomorrow or ever. Can you imagine how sinless would simplify life? When you can, you're imagining heaven. Sinlessness is the chief reason heaven will be simply wonderful. No longer will there be any curse. Revelation 22, verse 3. The curse is the consequence of sin, the hangover of rebellion. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve sinned. They relied on a tree to give what only God could give, life. When they sinned, simplicity caught the last flight to Seattle, opening the door for complexity to move in. Work became complex. Cursed is the ground because of you. Genesis 3, verse 17. The ground stopped cooperating with mankind, demanding painful toil and producing thorns and thistles. Relating to God became complex. No longer did they walk with God. Instead, they feared his voice and avoided his presence. When God asked, "Where are you?" Adam said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. Genesis 3, verses 9 and 10. Like a swarm of killer bees, foreign emotions attacked them: shame, guilt, and fear. Relating to God was no longer as simple as a walk in the garden, nor was relating to each other. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the snake. The snake was nowhere to be found. Relationships became complex, and their days became numbered. Behold the knockout punch of the death curse. You will return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. Genesis 3, verse 19. Talk about a tumble off the side of a cliff. As fast as you could bite an apple, the earth hardened against its caretakers. Adam and Eve hurried away from God, and God set the timer on their physical bodies. The curse complicated life. The lifting of the curse will simplify it. No longer will there be any curse. Revelation 22, verse 3. No more struggle with the earth. No more shame before God. No more tension between people. No more death. No more curse. The removal of the curse will return God's people and universe to their intended states. He will do this because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. Galatians 3, verse 13. Christ endured every consequence of the curse: shame, humiliation, even death. Because he did, the curse will be lifted, and because he did, life will finally be simple. You won't sin in heaven. You won't sin in heaven because you won't be tempted in heaven. Satan, the tempter, will be thrown into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Matthew 25, verse 41. He will no longer be present to tempt us. But do we have to wait until heaven to enjoy a simpler life? Are we destined and doomed to insanity in the meantime? By no means. You can inaugurate simplicity today. You don't have to go to Florida to find it, but you do need a Savior. Jesus Christ has great dreams for you, my friend. He offers joy in this life and perfection in the next. Want to simplify life? Simplify today by letting Jesus forgive the sins of yesterday. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Hebrews 12, verse 1. Sin ensnares us, entangles us. It trips us up. How cluttered is your heart? How long has it been since you let God cleanse your sin? If it's been a while, now you know why life seems so crazy. Let God do what he wants to do. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. 1 John chapter 1, verse 9. Simplify today by letting God forgive yesterday. Simplify tomorrow by setting your heart on heaven. You have a friend who will take you there. His name is Jesus. Questions for reflection. Part 1, Emmanuel. Who is Jesus to you? How would you describe him, and what do you know about him? I think this is so individual. I love that they do these at the end. Hi, Coffin. Good morning to everybody who just joined in. Let me see if we had any. I can't read the screens here, the little ones. Hi, Nurse Penny. I just wanted to say I'm a subscriber and absolutely love your NDE 10. You've seen 3 of them. Well, that's lovely. Thank you. I'm so glad it blessed you. Ashley, it's my brother. Ashley said she's praying over me and my son. It's my brother. Um, I get a lot of questions because I had a near death experience. I get a lot of questions from people about religion. And I am careful to separate religion from God. Religion is, hold on, in its purest sense, religion is um it's supposed to be like a primary school for learning the higher truths. That's what it's supposed to be. Religion is supposed to facilitate that. It's supposed to bring you in with a group of believers who are all trying to figure out the higher truths, right? The truths of heaven. And sadly, because people are involved and people are flawed, many times church becomes social climbing and gossiping and um, everything but what church is supposed to be. Church is supposed to be people who are just broken by nature, coming together, not by nature outside, but by our own nature, by the nature of life and everything that happens. It's supposed to be those people coming together in love to do life together and to figure out the higher meaning of what they're going through and the purpose of their life. And, Don and I were talking just this weekend about how far astray it's gotten. Um, Church, and I'm not saying every church, I'm just saying church in the general sense. Church in the general sense has become the world on earth. Okay, I don't know what that is. Church in the general sense has become the world. They're over the decades, church has become, or the church leadership, the church people involved in church have tried to make it more and more like the world to appeal to the worldly, and it just doesn't work. When you get the worldly in church, then that cycle just perpetuates itself and it becomes more worldly. When you go to work and people talk about you behind your back, that's very hurtful. Um, that should not be something that happens at church, but because the worldly are in church and because people are sinning even in that hour that they spend in church, against people with whom they're supposed to be trying to figure out how to help and do life with, then church becomes more and more like the world. And the people that are broken, who are going to church to find answers and peace and help, end up leaving because why get up early on a Sunday morning to be treated the way you're treated at work on Monday? There's just no reason for it. And I think that's a lot of where people have such disdain for religion. Um, and I've been there. I've been there. And I really can relate to people that feel that way. And it's hard because you can't fix the problem of sin. You can't fix the problem of people. Only Jesus can fix that. And some people come to a personal knowledge of Jesus that actually changes them. They still sin, but it actually changes them. And that is very confusing. The fact that they still sin is very confusing and sin against others to people who are trying to find God. They're like, well, these people are the same as those people at work. These people do all those same things and they just think they're forgiven for it. What hypocrites. And yes, while we are forgiven for it, what do you do to the person sitting next to you or the lady in the pew that you won't talk to because of some goofy thing? What do you do to that person's relationship with God? So I always try to encourage people, um, if you're suffering with church hurts, and so many people are, I want you to write down um, God on one side and church on the other. on a piece of paper and put a line down the middle. And on the side that says church, you can list whoever you want, whatever infraction you want, things that were done to you while in church, revolving around the church, people in the church who have hurt you. Put it all on that side. And you'll find that you don't need to put anything on the left. Everything goes on the right. Everything goes in the church. And this isn't to say church is a bad thing. It's just to help you see that nothing was done to you by God of those things. Now, there will be many people who will say, no, I have specific problems with God. And that's okay too. And so on that side of the page that says God, write those out and make sure that they don't overlap with the people from church. Give credit where credit is due, right? So if somebody at church gossiped about you or hurt your feelings or said something mean about your kid, get that on the church side. On the God side, you're going to put things like, when I prayed for God to save my child, he didn't. When I begged for God to save my marriage, he didn't. That stuff put on the God side. And I always tell people, if you don't know, if you've lost your faith, um, and justifiably so, because you've got these things on the God side of the page, there's got to be some reconciliation, because you can't get past it if there's no reconciliation, right? You don't have to solve the problem, so if you get in a fight with your spouse, yes, they could totally be wrong, and you can hold that against them forever, which then means that you are taking that thing that hurt you once and you are clubbing yourself over the head with it every day thereafter, because you don't have reconciliation over it. And sometimes reconciliation with a human is not possible. They won't apologize. They won't change their behavior. They continue to hurt you. Um, but it's not that way with God, okay? And I always tell people there's got to be some jumping off point where you say to yourself, I'm going to start here with God. Even if my mind tells me, oh, don't start there with God. Don't talk to God that way. If you've got stuff on the God side of that list and you're angry, you're rageful about God, that's okay. That's okay. You can jump off right there with God. You can say, you know what? You betrayed me. You didn't show up. You abandoned me. You didn't do anything to prevent me from being hurt. You didn't do anything to prevent my kids from being hurt. And I hate you for that. I'm so angry with you for that. Where were you? You've got this book and it says you're going to be there. Where were you? You weren't there. Don't you think Martha felt that way? I mean, they spell it out. Martha's like, where were you? If only you'd come when he was sick, you could have healed him. If only you showed up when he had died, you could raise him. But it's 4 days later and he's rotting in the tomb. Where were you? Where were you? You promised. You said you'd be here. You're our friend. How could you not show up for your friend? You showed up for total strangers. You're celebrating with strangers while Lazarus lays in the tomb? Where were you? I thought you were my friend. Martha felt that. Martha knew Jesus in the flesh, and Martha felt that. I think it's Martha. If it's not Martha, let me know. Debbie will know. So God understands that. Did Jesus scold Martha? No, he did not. He didn't. What did he do? Actually, it says that when Jesus got to the tomb, he wept. He wept for the loss of his friend. He wept. He felt the same thing that I opened this show with. I opened this show and I wept for loss, you know? And so he knows what you're going through. He felt the loss of Lazarus and he knew he could raise him and he still wept. He didn't show up like, with a parlor trick and an abracadabra and, hey, Lazarus, come on down. No, he didn't do that, did he? He said, Lazarus, come forward, come out. And that's what he's saying to us. If you are in a place of darkness in your relationship with God and you're angry at God and you feel like he's the one who put you there, tell him. Tell him you're angry with him. Where were you? I'm so angry with you. I prayed. I was faithful. I did all the things you said I was supposed to do, and you didn't show up. Because in that moment, and I tell this story all the time with my near-death experience, in that moment, So when God came into my presence, because I didn't move, God came to me. Um, I was overwhelmed and overjoyed, and I felt so loved and accepted. I mean, I can't describe it. There's nothing like it here. Um, but then I started kind of thinking back on my life, and I remembered that I was angry with God. And he wanted me to go to this intimate place with him so he could show me that his fingerprints were all over my DNA, that he had lovingly created me. He wanted to show me that. But because I was angry, I couldn't go there yet. I had to get that anger out. And I said to him, "Hold on a minute. You say," and I go from being, totally overwhelmed and overcome and overjoyed at being in the presence of God, to remembering that hurt and it turning completely to anger. And I said, "You said you were here for us. You said you loved us. You said just turn to me and pray to me, and whatever you ask, it'll be given." And I did that. But the kid's dad walked out on them and walked out on me. And I can take that he walked out on me. I'm grown. But watching those kids walk to that mailbox for stuff that their dad said he was going to send and come back every day with their heads down and upset because it didn't come. And I'm knowing the whole time it's not going to come. Who does that to children? What kind of God allows that? And did God get upset with me and chastise me or turn away from me or shut off his light to me? No. He said, "Oh, dear one, you've completely misunderstood me." See, he's telling me in that moment, "I understand why you think that this went down the way it went down. It's because you don't have the same understanding that I have." It's like when you're on a road, say you're on a hilly road, right? And you're stuck in traffic and you're down in this valley part of the road and you can't see that just over the hill they're clearing up whatever the wreck was and you're going to be able to go. And so you turn your car around because you can't see that the problem is being resolved just ahead. God's view is up on the hill, it is not down in the valley. And it didn't occur to me that there could be another viewpoint, a godly viewpoint, a hilltop viewpoint on what was going on in my life, what was going on in the lives of my children. I never considered that. I assumed that the way I perceived it was the way it is, and that there was no resolution just on the other side of the hill because I couldn't see it because I'm down in the valley. And he said, "Dear one, oh my goodness." It hurt his heart. He was upset that I was hurting. "Oh my goodness, dear one, you've completely misunderstood me." He's saying to me, "I wouldn't hurt you intentionally. I wouldn't hurt your kids intentionally. I didn't hurt you at all. This person did because people do that. But let me show you how I'm turning this for your good." And he gave me that God perspective that I didn't have. And it healed me because I went to him with anger because that's where I was. And I had to jump off from that point. And he showed me this scene. And it's my son sitting next to me, grown, and my grandson, who, when all of this happened, when I had the near death experience, was 2. But in this scene, he's 5. And he's running up and down the field playing soccer. And my son looks at me and he says, "Mom, I'm going to be the dad to him that I deserved." And it completely broke me. Like, I mean, ugly crying broke me. Um, because God was showing me, yes, this was difficult and this was hard, but with this generation, I am breaking the curse of fatherless children. And it was such a higher call on our lives. It was this higher thing. Are you willing to take the bullet to make it better for every other generation, to make it so your grandchildren and your great grandchildren and their children will not suffer this curse of fatherlessness? And I looked back over the history of our family, and my dad was involved, um, but I looked back over the history of our family as widely, not just my immediate family, and I looked at what that curse of fatherlessness had done to members of my family, how hard it was, for me when my parents separated, even though they got back together. It puts a wound on you that never heals, short of God. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're breaking that curse. You're breaking that generational curse. And then I saw that there was this higher calling on our lives. God was using my children, their generation, using me to break that curse so that things would be better going forward. Well, that makes sense. It's the suffering that doesn't make sense that we can't get past. And so I encourage you, if you're in that point where you're so angry with God, you're rageful with God, whatever it is, you're hurt, jump off there with Him. Make that list. Write the things that you're angry with God about on the left side of the list. Write the things that people have done to you, especially church people, on the right side of the list. And then look at the right side of the list and understand that people are people no matter what building they're in. And some people are better at walking with Christ and others are worse. And that is the nature of people no matter where you go. You can't change the nature of people, but you can change your nature and you can change how you interact with God. And that will then give you an incredible grace toward those people who have treated you badly. It's the only way to get the measure of grace, to treat them, to feel differently toward them, because only God can heal that. Those people, they could try to fix it, but I'm guessing since we're talking about making a list, they haven't. And even if they did, you're still carrying hurt over it, which is justified. Um, Two friends chatting says, but your son learned how not to be with his son. Yes, it's a tough lesson, but he's a great father and that is such a smart point. Thank you for that. Yeah, my son posted something years ago on Father's Day. I'm thinking probably 4 years ago. And it's a picture of him, and he's got my grandson. And Cole's sitting out on the deck, and David, my son, is giving him a haircut. And then he's got another picture of him standing in the kitchen with my granddaughter, and she's on a chair, and they're cooking something together. And he says, I'm trying to think of how the post reads, something like, doing all the doing all the things my pop missed out on. And it was interesting to me that he had worded it that way, because to me that showed an understanding that he has worth. That's something he still struggles with, of course. When a father walks out and just abandons them, I mean, they've only seen him maybe 5 or 6 times since he left, and that's not been my doing. I tried to facilitate that, them having a relationship with him. Those children grow up thinking something is missing in them, something's wrong with them. What kind of parent wouldn't want to be around the child? And they internalize that. And that showed me this little bit of growth that he had, where he was like, you missed out. You missed out on great kids. You missed out on these little moments of haircuts and cooking and all these different things. You missed out on those things. And I regret that you're going to have the regret of missing out on those. He's got grandchildren he does not know. And at some point he's going to get through whatever this life is for him, and he's going to get to the end, and his children and his grandchildren and the mother of his children is not going to be at his bedside to see him out when he dies. And I hope at that point he comes to the realization of everything he threw away. I mean, I don't know that he will, because people are people, and they're flawed. And sometimes, you do a terrible thing and you justify it in your mind just so that you can get through. And that is also the nature of people. So I try to be forgiving about that. But yeah, you're right, two friends chatting, that, if you want a pattern for how to parent your children, especially for my kids, just do the exact opposite of what your dad did, which was nothing. And if you're doing something, you're doing better than he did. And he's a great father. My daughter is a great mother to her children. She picked a guy who is a great father to her children. Um, they are healing the wounds through how they interact with their own kids, and how they're committed to being involved and staying together in a relationship, even when it gets hard. Don and I were talking about that the other day about, our regrets over being divorced, and because it was something I never wanted. In fact, I wouldn't even file. And my pastor finally said to me, Penny, he's abandoned you. You're not violating your your promise, your vows, because of infidelity and because he has actually abandoned you. He's gone to live with this other woman. And that's not the woman he's with now, but um and it took me months to come to terms with that I would not be violating a promise I made to God by divorcing this man. And it still hurt me. It still felt I felt guilt. I felt, what could I have done differently to make this work? And there just wasn't anything. He was just a serial cheater. He still is. And that's something broken in his nature that I couldn't fix, and I should have seen it sooner. The red flags were all there, but I was naive and young, and I wanted that family so badly. I wanted, even when I found out, I was like, look, we can make this work. We can go to counseling, we can fix this. Marriages do get through this, but he didn't want to do it. And so Don and I were talking about that, how right on the other side of divorce, you feel like there's not life after divorce. And his was especially hard because he was going to church and he felt like friends shunned him, and like he wasn't able to be involved in church to the same degree that he was because he had this stain of divorce on him. And it's just, and he was one of those people that couldn't understand why people got divorced, why they didn't push through, and here he found himself in the middle of it. And he tells people all the time, there's life after divorce. There's life. You can have happiness. You can find love again. Um, you can make it more meaningful because of the hurt that you've been through. You can be more committed because of um, areas where you weren't as committed as you should have been, be it communication or whatever. You've seen that rock slide happen before. And so in another relationship, if you're blessed with it, you you know what it looks like and you can steer clear. And so there's always some restoring work that God can be doing in us, but we got to be willing to jump off where we're at first, because no restoration can come if there's no relationship. And that's just something I want you guys to get your brains around, because I don't want you to feel like sometimes we get in this space. And I was in one with Don this weekend because he has this total road rage issue. Like, he thinks people are racing him who aren't even paying attention to him. And it drives me crazy. And we have a rule like, look, I can't control how you drive when you're by yourself, but when you're with me, we don't do that. And so he did that, and we got into an argument about it. And and I was holding that grudge, even into the next day. And I thought, we've talked about this so many times and you still do it, and it makes it feel to me that that person that you are having this dispute with, who probably knows nothing about it, is more important than my feeling safe. And I could carry that grudge going forward. I'm right. He would even tell you I'm right, to feel the way I do about it. But the wrong was done, and it upset me. But he apologized, and he'll try to do better, and he does much better than he used to do. Um, and I can either choose to hang on to that hurt and that feeling of not being important enough to him that he would consider my safety over anything else. I can choose to give him grace and say, okay, yes, he messed up. Everybody messes up. Yes, this is something y'all have been through several times. But are you going to continue carrying this grudge and being cold to him um, because of this infraction? Or are you just going to stop beating? See, this is the thing. The thing is over, right? So if you've got some issue between you and a person, the thing that happened most likely is not happening right now. Now, if it is happening right now, that's a different situation. But if you're holding on to these past hurts and stuff, and you're losing relationship because of it, um, what you're doing is you're taking that stick that hit you years ago, or however long it was, and you are continually whacking yourself in the head with it every day. You're making you miserable. That other person has moved on past this thing. They're not walking around most likely not beating themselves up about it every day. You're doing that for them. You're believing, um, that you're believing the lie that someone told you that you'd never amount to anything. You're believing the lie that, oh, you never finish anything, or you're never going to succeed at this, or you're not as pretty as your sister, and you're not as talented as your brother. You're going through life, you're holding that over your head. You're making that a crown, and you're sitting it on your head, and you're living under it. And you could just take it off. You could just take it off. You could just say, I'm not going to live like that anymore. I didn't make this crown. I didn't start it. I did put it on my head, and I wore it for a long time, but no more. I'm not going to be captive to those thorns anymore. I'm going to take that thorny crown off my head, and I'm going to be somebody different. I'm going to be more than I was. I'm going to give grace to that person because I can't take those thorns in my skin anymore. I just can't do it. I got to get out from under this thing. And that is the power of Christ. Christ has such love and compassion for us. When you take that crown off, he'll heal those wounds in your head. As much as you pour into God, as much as you spend time devoting yourself to building that relationship, that's really the only way. When I did the Anthony Cheen documentary the other day, a couple weeks ago, I guess, Anthony asked me at the end, he said, how can we know we're linked to God? How can we be closer to God? And he meant I could tell he meant I. How can I be closer to God? How can I know that I'm connected to God? I'm not going to have a near death experience, most likely. How can I feel that God is real to me? And I said to him, Anthony, it's like any other relationship. You have to put the time in. You have to actually sit down. You have to start communicating with God. And it doesn't have to be, all King Jamesy either. Oh, Father, thou art wonderful in heaven. Yes, that's true. But you could just start out like we do when we come together. God, I'm so angry with you. I'm so angry with you. Why weren't you there? Why didn't you protect Grayson from that car? Why couldn't you have just made him fall backwards so that he wouldn't have been hit and killed? He was 20 years old. He's my brother's friend. Where were you? Why couldn't you have made the interventions of the paramedics and the doctors effective? Why couldn't you have restored his body? I don't know. We're in the valley with that. I'm not on the hill. I can't see the God perspective. And the fact is that God doesn't manipulate every area of our life. We're not robots and automatons, just going through this maze that God makes. We have free will. We do things. We get hurt. We get broken. Sometimes we die. But ultimately, the love of God heals and restores. Your body might be useless and be cast away, but that's true for everybody at some point. Is it tragic that, our friend Grayson died at 20? It's incredibly tragic. Incredibly tragic. But he is completely restored now. Ultimately, if you've lost someone and you prayed and prayed and prayed for God to intercede and bring healing and that didn't happen, it's not that it didn't happen. Healing happened. That person is totally healed now. It just didn't happen in this body. And the fact of living in a physical body in a fallen world is that things get broken and sometimes they just can't be fixed. Who was it? Guys, do you remember? Let's Get Sewing. Who else is in here? Two friends chatting, Coffin, Michael, Debbie. Do you guys remember which disciple was it that had the thorn in his side? He had this thorn that just festered and hurt him and pained him, and he couldn't rest on that side, and just day after day this thorn. Let's see if we can look that up, because that's, let me climb over here into this tab. Disciple. Oh, see, Haley. Paul identifies his thorn in the flesh as a messenger from Satan to keep him from being conceited. I do not believe this thorn refers to a physical malady or anxiety per se. It involves an evil spirit God permitted to tempt Paul in the flesh. That is, okay, hold on. Let's see if we can find a little bit. I like Blue Letter Bible. Paul's thorn in the flesh. What was the thorn in the flesh to which Paul makes reference in 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 9? Um, The NIV says, to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations. So he had seen these incredible revelations and he didn't want to get the big head about it, or God didn't want him to get the big head about it, or whatever. There was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And boy, do we hate that as independent Americans or wherever you're from. You know, the idea of weakness is something that is so disdainful to us. But God has a different sort of relationship. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast, says Paul, all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. I say this to you guys all the time. Yeah, it was Paul. I say it to you guys all the time. Who am I that God would use me? Who am I? I've had a life that is marked with bad decisions, um, broken relationships. Who am I that God would use me to sit here before you today and say these things? It feels almost hypocritical to me to do it. But God says, my power is made perfect in your weakness. The fact that you're weak, the fact that you're broken speaks to other people. They're like, oh, wow, I'm weak and broken too. Penny's weak and broken. Penny's made bad decisions. Penny's had destroyed relationships. Penny's walked down the wrong path and chosen the wrong way. And look how God works in her. If I were perfect, it would mean nothing to you. You'd be like, oh, well, it's easy for her. She's perfect. No, I've had a really hard life. I've been on a ventilator 18 times in induced comas. My life has been, pardon my language, a shit show in large part. And God's strength is made perfect in those weaknesses in me. My God speaks to you all the more through me because I'm able to have faith despite the fact that it looks like God is just tormenting me for entertainment. He's not. That's just the thorn. But it shows you this imperfection in me, this flaw, this brokenness, that I think when I share the love of God with you, it is more meaningful because I have suffered so much. Debbie says, God is weaving this story into his tapestry today. The threads of Max Lucado's book, your reading, Grayson, John, your relationship with an understanding of God through your near-death experience, and all of us listening. Yeah, that's exactly it. You're right. You know, there's the story of the vessels. I can't remember what culture it is that does this, but when a bowl or a vase or some sort of vessel gets broken, they don't throw it away. They glue it back together with this glue that has gold in it, because they want to emphasize the fact that this thing that was once broken is back together. And they want you to see the flaws in it. The flaws are the beauty in it. And it is that for you guys. If you are suffering and you're angry at God, or you feel abandoned by God, or you feel beat up on by people in the church, that's okay. We can all relate to that. Who could not? If anybody can relate to that, isn't it Christ? Christ carried his own cross. The Jewish leader, I mean, they sent him to was it Caiaphas? And Caiaphas was like, I can't. Was it Caiaphas? I don't know why I can't remember that. Let me look for this. Jesus, is it the Sanhedrin? Jesus. Let's see here. Give me a little second. Ah, all right. Ah, no, I didn't say that. Now, I mean, I know we've all been wronged by church and had things done to us that were completely unjustified, especially at the hands of believers. Um, I, I just want the story of it. I can't remember where it's at. Here we go. Jesus Christ, the central figure of Christianity, died on a Roman cross as recorded in Matthew 27, verses 27 through 56, Mark 15, verses 21 through 38, and Luke 23, verses 26 through 49, and John 19, verses 16 through 39. Jesus was taken to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, who found him innocent. Pilate had Jesus flogged because he felt like the Jews were going to not be happy if they didn't get some measure of punishment. So the Jews are like, this guy's saying he's God. That's blasphemy. You need to sentence him to death. And so Jesus goes before Pontius Pilate and he's like, I find no sin in this man. I can't find anything he's done wrong. If you want him punished, you take him, you punish him. And he has him flogged to try to appease the crowd. Um, Pilate had Jesus flogged and then sent to Herod, who sent him back. The Sanhedrin, which are the Jewish religious people, demanded that Jesus be crucified. So Pilate fearing the Jews, got Jesus' own people, turned Jesus over to one of his centurions to carry out the death sentence. Jesus was publicly beaten, mocked, and spit on. A crown of thorns was placed on his head. He was stripped of his clothes and led to Golgotha, which means the skull. This is the hill where he dies. A mixture of vinegar, gall, and myrrh was offered to him, but Jesus refused it. Stakes were driven through Jesus' wrists and ankles, fastening him to the cross, where he was crucified between two convicted criminals. The inscription above his head read, "The King of the Jews," and that was a mocking description. They did that, it was mocking him. If he were truly the King of the Jews, he wouldn't be up on that cross, was their theory. Um, Jesus hung on the cross for about 6 hours, from approximately 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. During that time, soldiers cast lots. They were drawing short sticks, who can draw the longest stick to get Jesus's clothing, while people passed by shouting insults and scoffing. So it's not bad enough you're hanging on a cross. You've been beat to within an inch of your life. You've got nothing to help relieve your pain or suffering. You've been hanging there 6 hours. People who you did nothing but try to help are going by yelling things at you with your mother at the foot of the cross. They don't even have enough decency to keep their mouths shut out of respect for your mother. Um, Jesus spoke, oh, wait. While people passed by shouting insults and scoffing. If people shouted insults at you and scoffed at you, talked badly about you, rejected you, Jesus knows exactly what that's like. Jesus spoke to his mother Mary from the cross and the disciple John. He also cried out to his Father, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He even felt his own father had forsaken him. And God did, because it was part of the redemption plan. In the beginning, when the law was broken, when Adam and Eve partook of the apple, God began working on a plan of reconciliation. How can I win back their hearts? How can I win back my people to me? I love them. They've chosen to go astray. Have you ever had a kid that no matter what you do, they do the wrong thing, they're taking drugs, they're doing whatever, running with the wrong crowd. You've loved them all this way, and for some reason they're turning away from good counsel and the love of their parents to do this destructive thing, and you keep trying and trying and trying to win them back, but they won't have it. That's what this had to. So Jesus is saying, how could my own father forsake me? He hadn't even done anything wrong. At that moment, darkness covered the land. A little later, as Jesus breathed his final agonizing breath, an earthquake shook the ground, ripping the temple veil in two from top to bottom. The temple veil was very important. Only the religious people could go into the temple. There had to be this great preparation to go in there. And I don't know if it was in this time frame, but in one time frame, they had concern that if if a religious person were to go in beyond the temple veil after their cleansing and everything, and they weren't right with God, that they might die in there. And you couldn't have a person dying in there where God was beyond the veil. So they would tie a rope to their ankle so they could pull them back out in case they got struck dead for something or just died because they were not living right. Um, that veil kept the common man from the living God. And on the day that Christ dies, as he takes his last breath, that veil that separates the common man from the living God was torn from top to bottom. And we now have access to the living God. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. I mean, can you imagine that? Jesus dies on the cross, there's an earthquake, tombs break open, and people, bodies of holy people start walking out, long dead people reanimated. It was typical for Roman soldiers to show mercy by breaking the criminal's legs, causing death to come more quickly. But when the soldiers came to Jesus, he was already dead. Instead of breaking his legs, they pierced his side. Before sunset, Jesus was taken by Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea and laid in Joseph's tomb. On the Christian holy day known as Good Friday, observed the Friday before Easter, Christians commemorate the passion or suffering and death of Jesus Christ on the cross. Many believers spend this day in fasting, prayer, repentance, and meditation on the agony of Christ on the cross. Um, Oh, thank you, Debbie. Kintsugi, Japanese art of repairing with gold. Thank you. Two friends chatting says, and yet Jesus said to forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. Can you imagine that? Thank you for bringing that up. These horrible people are cursing at him, making fun of him, making his mother's suffering even worse, which to me is horrible. You know, the fact that Jesus is dying on the cross is horrible, but then to do things that would bring torment on the mother, that's something that is beyond the pale. Um, and what does he say? Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand that they're part of this plan. Don't punish them for their part in this. Forgive them. And I have to think they were forgiven. Debbie says, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Oh, I love that. Leonard Cohen from Anthem. The light who enters our brokenness is Jesus. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. So, in that moment where Jesus is carrying the sin of the world, your sin, my sin, we've all done stuff. Nobody's judging you. He's carried all of that because he wanted so badly to be with you. It's always so interesting to me because I'll hear people say, well, what kind of God would allow people to be separated from God at their death because they chose to turn away from God in life? The kind of God that allows free choice, free will. Not going to force you to be with him. That's not the gentlemanly way to behave. If you don't want that, God honors that. That is the ultimate in allowing you free will. You don't have to be with him. No, he's not going to make you be with him. But by not being with him, you choose to be without him, and he doesn't want that. It says that Jesus tarries coming back because he wants that none should perish without being in relationship with him. God is always there. He's always waiting. He's so patient. He's so long suffering. He just mercy, mercy, mercy. Come to me. I love you. I love you. And we kick and we scream and we push and we run. And still he's right there. He's like, I'm right here. You ever try to calm a 2-year-old in a store who's freaking out about something? Do you just walk away from him? No. Sometimes you just have to stand there and listen to him scream, or you pick him up and you try to settle him down. And still they can thrash and scream and yell and try to get away. Your teenager can curse you and walk away and defy all your rules and spit in your face, but still there you are. Right? I love you. When you're ready, you come back to me. I'll be here. I'm here for you to the ends of the days, to the end of the world. I'm here for you. I understand you're angry, and maybe as a parent, I've made some mistakes, or definitely as a parent, I've made some mistakes. But I love you, and I'm here for you. And when you're ready, I gotcha. that's the God we serve. And as parents, I think it makes it so easy to understand, because we've all had our kids be defiant and turn away and be rebellious. And we want so much to have that relationship back, to have them back in our arms, back in our fold, and to be able to influence them so that they have the best life possible. And it is excruciatingly painful when you have a child that rejects that. That's Christ. Christ is like, it is excruciatingly painful to me that all I want is to love you and to be in relationship with you forever. But you don't want it. You just walk away. And I have to allow it. I'm God. I could demand it. I could say, nope, you're a little automaton now and you will worship me and you will love me. He could make it so. That's not what a gentleman does. It's not what a loving God does. And it's just so hard because you can see your kid careening toward the cliff. And sometimes you just can't stop them. And you would give your life to prevent them from going and taking those drugs or going and being with that abusive person. But there's nothing you can do to stop them when they're determined to head over that cliff. I can't imagine that on a God level, seeing masses of people do that. It's got to be just excruciating. I would imagine it's probably worse than the cross, because you could so easily stop it and protect them and bring them to you and carry them into the afterlife. But the choice is theirs. My mom did. Left me screaming at the store. It worked. I stopped screaming. Okay, I'll end with this funny story since two friends chatting brought that in. So when my kids were little, they went to the Boys and Girls Club in Berea, and we were in a hurry that day in the van, and they're all old enough to buckle themselves in. And so I said, okay, guys, come on, we got to go. We got to go. I can't remember where we had to be. And so I hear the door slide open, slide shut, and the kids, all jump in and put their seatbelts on. And so I drive away. And the two older kids are just cracking up laughing. And I'm thinking, what is so funny? And so I look back, and Jacob is chasing the van, the youngest one. Mom, wait for me. You forgot me. And the two older kids are laughing, right? Instead of saying, Mom, wait, Jake's not in the van. They thought it would be funny to just let Jake chase the van. And so I pulled over and I said, now look, the next time I tell you get in the van, you get in the van. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there goes Mother of the Year, my crown, my Mother of the Year mug, and my sash. I forgot my kid at the Boys and Girls. But two friends chatting your story is worse because she left on purpose, left you screaming at the store. When David was little, he was being terrible like that in a store. And I said, if you don't get up and straighten up right now, I'm leaving this store with all of the groceries in the cart. We're just going to leave all the cookies, the milk, everything. I'm walking out. And he didn't think I'd do it. And I said, 1, 2, 3. And I scooped that child up and I carried him screaming out to the car, right? And I said, I will never take you to Walmart again, because this was a chronic problem. And I thought, I got to do something. And he's like, I'll be good. You left our groceries at the store. Our groceries are at the store. How are we going to get our food? And I said, well, when I get settled down, I will go back when your dad is here and he can watch you, and I'll go get the groceries. And this went on for a while where I wouldn't take him to Walmart anymore because he had been terrible for the last time. And then finally one day I was like, do you think that you can behave yourself and not scream and throw a fit in the grocery store? I'll be good. And I never had any trouble with him again. He straightened out. But yeah, that's parenting according to Penny. I think my son probably doesn't agree that these were the right decisions, but they were the decisions I made. All right, guys, I'm going to pray us out. John should be calling me soon because he's probably gotten news about Grayson, and I don't want to have to put him off on a phone call for that. So let me pray us out. We will be here Friday night. I have an interview tonight with Gwenda. I don't know if this is a public interview. Let me look at this one. Gwenda Smith is her name. I can't remember the name of her podcast. Hold on. Anyway, I'm pretty sure this is a podcast one if you guys want to attend. Gwenda Smith. Let me look here and see if this is a. She's from Australia, which will be fun. I love talking to people with accents. Health. Let's look on YouTube. Oh, for the love of Pete. YouTube. Okay, let's call it Health with Gwenda. Yeah, okay, so hold on, let me get this here. Gwenda Smith is her name. So if you go to YouTube, I'm gonna grab her link right here. Copy. I have to find myself on Rumble here. I don't know why Rumble on my thing doesn't show me as being live. I'm pretty sure I am. Um, so in the live chat here, I'm putting the link to her channel, and I think I'm on with her tonight at 9. So I'm hoping that's a live thing. Hold on. Here it is. Uh, paste. Okay, and let me come over here and put it in for everybody else. Hi, Snap. Oh, you are late, honey. It's okay. You can rewatch it. Here's the link for the um, YouTube channel I'm going to be on tonight. We've encountered an area. That's fine. Or error. It's okay. Go. Just post it anyway. Let's see if that went through. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so if you didn't see that for some reason, her channel, I think if you just, it's H.E.A.L. This is just put it into the YouTube search. H.E.A.L. Heal with Gwenda, Gwenda. And let me see if I can bring this up. Uh, let's the screen share. Let's do another one. Yes, I share screen. Okay, YouTube. This is her page. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. Nope. Add to scene. That's her page right there. Gwenda Smith. Let's make this a little smaller so I can find you guys. Okay. There we go. Anyway, that's her YouTube page. And let me look and see if she does these live. Yeah, it looks like she does. Um, yeah, here it is right here. Let me see if you guys can see that. Yep. Special edition of Soul and Beyond. I guess that's her live show. Penny Whitbrook shares her experience of the afterlife Thursday, September 7th at 9 a.m. That's Australia time. September 6th, ET USA Eastern time. I don't know. I know I've got it down for 9 p.m. tonight. Let's make sure that's right. Yeah, I've got it on for 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm surely she sent me my time. Yeah, I think that's right. So anyway, that's where that is. So if you guys want to come and hang out tonight, you can ask questions. We'll be solely focused on the near-death experience. I'm trying to get through it without being a big crybaby. I'm so sorry I was so emotional today. But since my near-death experience, I find that I am less likely to hide my emotional state. Debbie says, my John David has been listening in with me this morning with tears as he listened to you read the story of Lazarus. He loves to listen to your podcast. Oh, hugs, John. I love you guys so much. All right. Let me see if we have any comments from our other places. I did welcome Snap. And hi, Kay. I didn't see you there. So if you guys want to come and hang out tonight, you can watch that podcast or YouTube Live, I guess. And it'd be cool to have some of my folks there. So you've got the link for that. I've shown you the thing. You can just pause it and pull it back up until you find it. But hopefully I'll see you there. Let me pray us out. Let me get this back where it is in case you guys have one last question or something. I don't miss it. Oh, there I'm live, finally. I guess I didn't hit refresh. That's my bad. Okay, got it. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, what a week. Nate, hold on, gotta pause that. Hold, pause, God. Okay. What a week. we are just my heart is so heavy for the loss of Grayson, and I just pray that you would be with my brother John and with everybody who's been affected by Grayson's death. Just such a tragedy when a kid, a 20-year-old, dies. Um, I just pray that you would give me comfort in that situation and help me remember how close heaven is. It's not this far away place, it just feels far away. And I pray that you would comfort John. This is going to be so hard on him. I just love my brother dearly. And, with an intellectual um, disability, it's so hard to understand these things. It's hard if you don't have an intellectual disability. But I just pray that you would bring him comfort and dry his tears and help him to have good rest because I know this is really going to hit hard for him. And I just thank you for all the people in John's life that support and love him, that he does have that in place because so many people don't. And Father, I just pray that you would express my love to Grayson and let him know that John loves him and that we'll see him when we get there. Tell him to save me a seat. We just thank you for the time that we had with him. And I thank you for this podcast. And I'll say it again, who am I that you would use me in such a way? And I pray that my story and this time that we spend together blesses all of our friends who watch in the live stream and who watch in the rewind. And just, Father, help them know of your love for them. And help them if they're in a place where they're at odds with you, they're angry or bitter towards you. Help them express those feelings and let them know it's okay to be angry with God and that you're a big enough God to love them through that. And help us develop relationship with you. Remind us that you're the God who wept. Jesus wept. So you understand our tears. You understand our suffering. And the only thing you want, the only thing that you require of us is just to let you love us. Father, help us push down our egos and put our own thoughts and will aside and just let you love us. That's all you want is that relationship, Father. Help us want that too. And help us walk in ways that bring us closer to you, not in ways that separate us. Father, I thank you for everybody that's here. I thank you so much for everybody who supports the show, whether it be financially or in prayer. It makes the cost of this so much easier. And the fact that we're supported in prayer just means the world to me. I have teams of people that pray for me, and I am so blessed for that. Prayer is so important. Father, I pray for everybody here if they're suffering in their lives, if they are separated from someone they love, either by death or just by situation. I pray that you would reconcile those things, that you would bring those things that have caused separation to resolution so that there can be healing in relationship. Father, we just thank you so much for everything that you do for us, for the provision and for the love, most of all for the love and the friendship that you provide for us and how you don't push us away. You're not like people. You want nothing more than to be in close relationship with us, and we want that with you. And Father, if there's anybody here today who's experienced that separation from you because they've been hurt or because they're bitter or angry. Father, I pray that they would come to see that you want to heal them, that you want to love them through that, and that pushing you away is only making things worse. And I pray that they would come to a loving understanding of who you really are, that you knit them together in their mother's womb, that your fingerprints are all over our DNA, that you want nothing more than fellowship and love and relationship with us because you do want to bring us to your home and live with us forever. We thank you for that. Father, we thank you for Jesus and for his sacrifice on the cross. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, if you need anything from me, all of my contact information is in the description section of the video. Um, if you're watching on YouTube, I don't know if it makes it there, but I'll run over there and put it in so that you can get hold of me. My website is witthealthcoaching.com. My email is witthealthcoach@gmail.com, two T's and wit. And you can, all my contact stuff is on the website, so that's an easy way to find me. And if you think of anything you need, any books, we finished this book, so we will take a week off of book club. It's usually how we do it. Sometimes, we'll see. If something really hits me strong before next Wednesday, we may start with book club again on Wednesday. But just plan that we take the normal week off between books to kind of process, unless I give you some other indicator. And, if you come to the show tonight, I will see you there, and I will be excited to hopefully be able to answer your questions and see your comments. And that's it. I love you guys whole big bunches, and I will see you either tonight or on Friday. Nurse Penny out.